Good evening to everyone. So nice to have see each one of you. After a long time, we are having this personal storytelling session. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome each one of you to this story evening, to this personal storytelling session by our forum across and beyond the Arabian Sea. Thank you to each one of you for joining online to hear the stories, to listen to the stories, because I think listeners are the most important part of any story. Without listeners, there are no storytellers. And we continue this, telling and listening and continue here. And as always, for today's session, we have a wonderful theme. And that theme is that little voice in your head. Many people feel that their thoughts take the form of an inner voice, a sort of conversation with themselves in their mind. Conventional wisdom tells us that this is our conscience speaking, popularly depicted in the media as introspective dialogues by our demons and angels whispering in either ear. In psychological jargon, they call it as our inner speech. Now, the truth is, most of us hear that little voice in our head from time to time, especially when we have to make choices or when we are facing challenges and so on. Sometimes we listen to that little voice, and sometimes we choose to ignore that, just shush it down. Either way, we have to live through the consequences of that decision. And then there may be a story worth sharing with others. And that's exactly what our storytellers are going to do today. We have this wonderful bunch of 4 storytellers today who are going to share their most intimate personal story on this theme, that little voice, with all of us. Now, before I open the forum for our storytellers, as always, let me quickly share a personal narrative based on this theme. Here we go. Way back in 1990, I was in the second year of graduation doing BSc Physics in Alfonsa College, Pala, a small town in Kerala. Now, my college is a convent college run by nuns named after the Saint Alfonsa, who lived in the same area. Now, those of you who have studied in convent schools or college, especially by nuns, for all girls, would understand the kind of fun we have there, isn't it? Although I was a physics student, most of my friends were from English literature. And some of the English teachers also I was very close with. Possibly because I always wanted to study English and ended up studying physics due to some circumstances. Maybe that's another story for another day. Nevertheless, I had my friends in English class, and our physics class was situated in another building, which was away from the main college building. And it was connected to the main building by an overbridge. Now, that building was very beautiful, a chapel in the ground floor and maths and physics classes upstairs. They must have thought, let this physics and maths girls be away from the hustle and bustle and all the fun activities of the main college building and let them concentrate in their rigorous studies. So whenever I get any break between classes, I used to run to the literature class, crossing that overbridge to catch up with my friends and generally having some fun. So one such day, while I was talking with my friends near the literature class, this announcement came by our vice principal, Sister Malaysia. She announced, girls, we are going to have a unique contest for the first time in our college. It is to choose Miss Alfonsa based on some criteria from one among you. So let's just gear up for that contest. Wow, we all clapped in delight. Something fun finally happening in the college. As we were discussing about this, our very dear English teacher, Miss Molly, was passing by. She approached us with a warm smile and asked, hey girls, did you hear that announcement? Why don't one of you participate? We were little taken aback by that suggestion because nobody in that college thought any of us in our group would be eligible to participate in such a contest. So we said, no, ma'am, it's okay. We will just cheer for everyone and have some fun. She was not ready to leave. She looked right at me and said, this girl, this Shanty from physics can be a participant. All others can help her. And my friends were really taken aback this time. They looked at each other and started discussing, and I vehemently protested, no, no, no way. I am neither talented nor beautiful, and no way that I'm participating. And with those words, I just ran back to my class. While running, that little voice in my head chirped, Miss Alfonsa Pageant, Shanty, what are you even thinking? Remember, you come from a middle-class family. You are here to study. Your parents are very practical. Be in your limits. Don't even think about that. That was that. But my friends and Miss Molly were so persistent that they literally dragged me to that. My friend even brought her sister's engagement sari, a pink silk sari for me to wear. And all my friends did my hair and makeup in however way they knew, which was not close to any salon standard. Even before that, just before that, even that little voice was so annoyed and said, Shanty, you are going to make a fool out of yourself. Why are you doing this? I told my friends, listen, I can't do this here. I don't even know how to catwalk. My friend said, it's okay. We will have fun. You just go. They literally pushed me onto the stage. I remember I spent one whole minute on that stage. They asked me some questions. I answered something. I don't even remember what I said. After that 1 minute, I came back to the backstage and I broke down. I cried and cried my heart out. I don't know why. Maybe it was shame, embarrassment, and that feeling of failing my friends and Miss Molly somehow. And my friends, bless them, they consoled me. They said, Shanty, don't worry, let's go back and enjoy. When the results were announced, I was second runner-up. There were only 5 participants for that contest. Somehow, all the other experiences, incidents from my college life, I fondly remember. And this one experience, I wanted to forget. But that little voice in my head never let me forget that. It kept reminding me, remember, I told you, you made a fool out of yourself. And after that incident, I never went on a stage for 18 long years. I forgot that Shanty, who was a school girl, who always was excited to participate in elocutions, debates, group dances, skits. I forgot that completely. I did everything else. I had a career, I got married, I had kids, but I never went on any stage, nor did I face people in a formal setting to speak at all. Now, what happened after 18 years? 18 years later, we came to Doha and I joined Toastmasters. Yes, my little voice spoke that time too. Practicing public speaking at this age? What are you thinking? But I think by then I've evolved as a person, of course, aged, and I learned to tame and train that little voice of mine. That little voice of mine. And I went ahead. And that was the start of many changes and many new beginnings in my life. And from then, I think today, my little voice is my closest friend and confidant, who's much more encouraging and positive most of the time. So friends, on that note, let's start our wonderful, wonderful story session with our excellent bunch of eloquent storytellers. Our first storyteller for today is Jyoti Pande. It is my pleasure to have her here today. Let me introduce her. She is a passionate storyteller, a psychologist, and happiness and mindfulness coach are a few tags to describe Jyoti. She identifies herself as a lifelong learner and believes that her purpose is to help people heal themselves through her healing stories. Now, more than anything, I know Jyoti as a wonderful, wonderful, endearing human being, the kindest, one of the kindest souls that I know, a dear friend of mine. It is my pleasure to welcome her here to share her story. Thank you so much, Jyoti, to be here. Today, she is sharing her story titled The Voice of Your Heart. Now, the screen is all yours, Jyoti. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Shanty. This space is very close to my heart, and every time I come here, I go back much wiser and a learned person from the experiences of all the tellers. So today's story of mine goes back to almost 8 years back or 7. No, I think it was 8. I was a budding storyteller. I had just completed a course from Kathalaya by Geeta Ramanujam and doing small storytelling sessions with schools and the community everywhere. And I would like to flaunt all those pictures on the Facebook. Not that I don't do now, but I had started then. And someone in Bhopal, I belong to Bhopal, saw those pictures and contacted me on the messenger. Jyoti ma'am, would you do a workshop for us? Me? Workshop? And a little voice inside my head said, don't even try. Storytelling is one thing, and teaching others, workshop? Whom do you think you are? And I said, no, Bhaskar. The name of the boy was Bhaskar. I don't feel confident enough. Though the thought excited me a lot. Imagine standing, planning, and then training others in storytellers. I listened to my voice. Yeah, I better listen to that voice. Anyway, when I reached Bhopal, and that time I was at Hisar, and every year I would go to my mother's place to Bhopal and spend almost 20-25 days in February, for the weather would be really nice. When I reached Bhopal, somehow Bhaskar from my post came to know and contacted me again. Ma'am, why don't you do a session for us? We can't go to Delhi or Bangalore to Kathalaya. You have been trained. Whatever you know would be fine. I said, no, Bhaskar. I don't feel confident enough. I have barely started my storytelling journey, and to do a workshop. He again requested, and just to kind of shut him up, I said, okay, I'll think about it and get back to you. The next day, I went to my friend's place for lunch. Both of us had done this Kathalaya course together. And over a nice lunch of chola bhatura and mango kulfi, we shared our innermost thoughts, bitched about husband and spoke about children and did a lot of things. And as both of us were lying down, I told her, I said, somebody approached me to do a storytelling workshop. Just imagine, yaar. She was serious. She said, really? Let's do it. I looked at her and I said, are you serious? She said, yeah. Why don't we do it together? And again, this voice inside my head said, don't listen to her. Okay. Storytelling is one thing and workshop is totally different thing. Don't listen to her. But she was more persistent than this resistance of mine. She said, let's do it together. We will divide the sessions and let's do it. Why don't you call up Bhaskar just now? She made me call him up. And the moment I said, I'm ready for the workshop along with my friend. He was thrilled. He said, leave everything to me, the flyers, the venue, getting participants. You just have to come and deliver. And after 2, 3 phone calls, the date was fixed for 18th of Feb. And we started our preparations. It was fun, I must tell you. Though that voice inside my head would tell me, I'm telling you, Jyoti, don't do this. You are not good enough. But this friend of mine, probably her voice was much stronger. So we went ahead, we researched, we designed the activities, we looked for the stories we would tell, how would we structure the session, and everything was perfect. On 17th of Feb, till late in the evening, we were sitting together, practicing our own part, coordinating everything. And then I reached home with the promise that next day, that is, the workshop was to be for 2 days, 5 hours each, 18th and 19th. And 17th, I came back home. I had an early dinner and went off to sleep. And it was decided that 18th, she would call me up at around 6 in the morning and we will do a final rehearsal kind of thing. She said, I'll give you a ring, and I went off to sleep. Next day, because I was anxious, I got up around 4:30 and started practicing my bit. Again, that voice said, Jyoti, it will be a fiasco. I'm telling you, people would be able to see through that you don't know a lot about storytelling. I took a deep breath and I said, now everything is fixed. I'm not listening to you. And I started practicing. And time went by. I did my morning rituals, my meditation. And then when I looked at the watch, it was almost 6:30 and this friend had not called up. Very unlike her. Very, very unlike her. She's one person who would never do. I switched on my data pack because the connectivity on the first floor was not very good. And I said, let me just look if she has sent a message or something. And there it goes. I saw her WhatsApp message, which was delivered at 1 p.m. last night. She said, my mother-in-law has expired and I'm going to the village and I will not be able to do the workshop. And my heart skipped a beat and that inner voice laughed. Didn't I tell you? Not a good idea. Don't do that. I was almost in tears. The first thought, I have to cancel it. I have to cancel it. I called up my daughter in Singapore. I said, Ammu, this has happened and I think I'll cancel it. What? What, Mama? Act like a professional. People have come from far and wide. The venue is selected. They are waiting for the workshop. Just go ahead and do it. I wanted to hear, let it be, Mama, don't do it. Let it be, Mama, don't do it. It did not happen. My next call was to my husband at Hisar. I said, this has happened and I just can't go ahead. I don't know her part. I never paid attention. I was totally focused on what I was going to deliver. He said, you are a soldier's wife. How can you even give up without fighting? How can you even think of it? Just go ahead and do it. I wanted to hear, let it be, don't do it. Cancel it. From here, also the response was very different. I had to take a decision. I had to take a decision because 9 o'clock, the workshop was to start. I went downstairs where my mother was sitting with her cup of tea. A 48-year-old put her head on her lap with tears in her eyes and said, Mama, क्या करूं? कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. नहीं होगा मुझसे. नहीं होगा. She just stroked my head for a long time and said, do what your heart says. Do what your heart says. And something stirred within me, and in a flash, the venue, the participants, Bhaskar's call, my daughter telling me, my husband, Everything passed through like a movie. I just got up, washed my face, wore my pink sari with a red ikat blouse, and started to get ready. I reached to the venue. Everybody was excited about this first of its kind workshop of storytelling in Bhopal. And I told them that Pune will not be joining us. And they said, oh, very sad and all. But after that, they all were just ready for the workshop. And I'm a mindfulness practitioner. I started with the mindfulness visualization, which was not a part of the workshop at all. Since I wanted to calm myself, I did that. And that day, whenever I felt being distracted, or whenever that inner voice, that Mr. Resistant tried to tell me, Jyoti, didn't I tell you? See, you're going to forget. You won't deliver. I would start my meditation, 2 minutes of short meditation, and the participants also would enjoy that. Day one passed. For next day, I had a lot of time to prepare. I was better prepared of my friend's part. The next day also, we did the workshop with lot of mindfulness activities, which were initially never a part of the workshop. And at 5 p.m., when the workshop got over, I gave myself a permission to finally take a deep breath. There were media people all around. For somebody had informed them that a workshop of this kind is happening. There were interviews and there were good feedbacks, fabulous feedbacks. And the participants especially liked the mindfulness activities, which were not a part of it. And when I think about that time, very often I think, unless you do, you would not know what you are capable of doing. After that, I have done many, many, many workshops. But that first one will always remain special, for it taught me to fight my fears. Thank you.
Wonderful, 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 endearing story, Jyoti. Indeed, the voice of your heart. And I'm sure with that story, we are all inspired. I like that real life touch of tragedy. I think I know Poonam. And from then, your journey of being a trainer and how it all started off. The takeaway for me from your story is, do as what your heart says from your mother. Thank you for sharing this story at our forum, Jyoti. Thank you so much. Moving on, friends, our next storyteller is another dear friend, Sarita Shetty. Sarita is a professional storyteller, writer, and life coach with a mission to empower individuals and impact millions of lives. Through her storytelling and coaching, she strives to make a positive difference, one person at a time. Sarita is a believer in the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because who we all are. She envisions a beautiful universe where people are uplifting and cheering for each other. Sarita, I had a chance to interact and meet her earlier this year. Wonderful storyteller. More than that, another wonderful soul, a dear friend. It is an absolute pleasure to have her here. Thank you, Sarita. Today, she is sharing her story titled That Voice in My Head. Over to you, Sarita.
Thank you so much, Shanty, for having me over here on your wonderful platform. And let me tell you that this is my first international storytelling because of you. Thank you so much. And Jyoti, wonderful story in your mesmerizing style. And I want to know how you're spotlighting yourself. It is so good, your screen, only you're looking out. So thank you so much for that story. So, yeah. So let me start mine. ओ सरिता, क्या करती है? Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Sarita. We can hear you completely. Absolutely, we can hear.
Thank you. Oh, Sarita, if you know before the way, why didn't you tell me? We would have saved time, ना? क्या करती है? कमाल करती है तू भी. Sorry यार. चल कोई बात नहीं यार. We'll be on time. Don't worry. My friend Farana said. Farana was so cool. Whenever I sat next to her in her car, I felt like I was sitting in one of the F1 Formula racing cars. We had to go for our classes and we were getting late because the usual way which we used to take it was, choke up block with traffic. So we
Sarita, your voice is getting disturbed with some other voice. I don't know what. Sarita, we can't hear you. Sarita, can you hear? No, we can't hear you. No. No problem. No, we can't hear. There is some other noise coming actually. Some other sound is coming. Hmm. We lost Sarita, right? Okay, she's entering.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Sarita, we can.
So should I start from the beginning?
I think
Or
you can. Yes, you can start from the beginning. That's better. Yes.
Oh, Sarita, why didn't you tell me before? We would have saved time, right? If you knew the way, you should have told before. Sorry, yaar. Chal, koi baat nahi. We'll be on time, don't worry. This was my friend Farana who was telling me. She was so cool. Whenever I sat in her car next to her, I used to feel like I was sitting in a F1 Formula racing car. Farana and me were trying to go to our class the other day. So the traffic was so bad and the road was choke blocked, and so we were getting late. So we were trying to look out for that detour, that left turn which would take us from that inner wala gully, and we would reach the place faster. But today's story is not about Farana or her cool driving skill. Today's story is about the little conversations, the little stories, the little voices that keep happening in my head all the time. That day, Farana did not know which left turn she had to take. But I knew which left turn had to be taken. But my mind went, keep quiet, don't tell anything. But you know the way, speak out. Stay mum. You're not good in giving directions. I chose to stay mum. My inner voice, always talking to me both the ways. Hello everybody, my name is Sarita and I live in the suburbs of Bombay with my husband Hriday and our 3 children, my 95-year-old mother-in-law and my 2 children. It was the year 2018. New year, new week, new beginning. I was excited because for the first time I was traveling for work to a new city, and that too all alone. Soon it was the day of 5th of January morning, I remember. 4 o'clock I got up, made batches of idlis for breakfast for my family, for the 2 days which I would be going traveling. Those were the days when there was no Swiggy, Zomato, or WeFast. Of course, the previous day I prepared the lunch and dinner ka khana. And as I was stuffing the fridge with the, coconut chutneys, my fridge was already groaning. And I could almost hear it say like, stop filling, when I was just keeping a dabba of sevia kheer. Then I gave my mother-in-law a bath, got her ready for the day. And then I got ready. I wore my navy blue kurta, which had white flowers embroidered on that, I remember. I pulled up my white churidar and I strapped my new heels. They got set. I almost said goodbye to the family, and then I thought I would take the Uber to the T2 terminal. Then Hriday and my kids said, we'll drop you to the airport. So I said, fine. So they came to drop me there, and when we reached the airport, I again went through the list, my mother-in-law's medicine list and her day's routine list. And they said, oh, got it. And finally, as the car went by and I was standing outside the line in just to go into the airport, and I waved them goodbye, tears started welling in my eyes. My mind again went in the Bollywood style. What if I don't see them ever again? Will I be able to do this journey alone? I said, don't be silly. I just took hold of everything and just walked into the airport. I dragged my red suitcase and I was looking out for the line to catch for checking in. I went to a long line was there, so I went to the last person who was standing and I went and stood behind her. Lot of time was there. My flight was at 8:20. So I started reading all the digital ads which were being put up in the airport. So it was saying 1 hour before the flight, the counter will be closed. I said, I'm way ahead of time, and I was very cool and I was still reading. No sharp objects, scissors, knives, Swiss knives. And my mind was saying, oh, but you have a comb inside your handbag. Okay, let me just take care of it. So I removed the comb from my handbag and just put it in my suitcase. I was still reading. The time was going, but the line was not, I was moving at a snail's pace. I said, what to do now? I continued reading there. No aerosol can, no perfumes, no oil, blah, blah, blah. I was reading. I was wondering, why is this line not moving? The time was moving ahead though. So all this conversation is just happening inside my head. So I thought should I ask somebody? I said, no. I will look like a fool. So then ultimately, after a long debate inside my head, I asked the lady in front of me, is this a line for the domestic flight? He said, of course, I'm also going to Guwahati. This is the line, don't worry. Okay. So then finally, when it was 5 to 8, it was my turn. The lady behind the counter saw my ticket and she just made a call and she said, madam, you cannot go in this flight. See, I told you you won't be able to manage. I said, what? Then my head said, say something, don't keep quiet, don't stay mum, say something. Please, madam, I have to go into this flight. Please, let me at least talk to some other officer or somebody. Please let me go. I have to go for this. So she just directed me to that Jet Airways counter and she said, this is the international flight thing, and for your 8:20 flight, the counter has been closed, so that's why you cannot go now. But you can go there and talk. So I went there and there was a man standing, an officer was standing, Jet Airways, wearing his white shirt and blue pants. And he looked at me and said, you cannot go, absolutely no. So I said, please sir, I have to go there. My events are there and everything has been booked for 2 days. I said, okay, you can go. Why do 1:40 is the other flight? Why don't you book a flight? I said, no, that's not possible. 1:30 is my first event and everything is booked back to back. I need to go. Please sir. See, this is my first time flight. I had come way before. I told him all that and how I was standing in the wrong line. And somehow then he said, okay, let me try. Let me see what I can do. So he made a couple of calls and then he said, okay, you can go, but you cannot take your luggage and go. I said, okay, let me go. Luggage ka baad mein dekhenge. So then he said, okay, and he smiled. You've got only 12 minutes. At your risk, if you reach the flight, you are good to go. So I said, Baba, 12 minutes and it is T2 and it is a long way. And first time I'm traveling alone. And so I said, okay. So I grabbed my bag, my story bag, which is my favorite bag. This is the elephant bag, which I take around all everywhere. So that was my first trip with that. And so I took it and I started running with my heels. Remember, I'm not good with heels at all. I started running and it was making noise. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I was just galloping like a horse and I didn't know where to go. I was stopping all the people and only trotting, and it's a slow pace to ask people, gate to be kidhar hai, gate to be kidhar hai. Somehow they directed and I reached there. And when I reached at the security check, there was a long queue. Then I asked the cop, can I go? Can I go? Otherwise, I'll miss my flight. He asked me, what time, which flight? I said, 8:20 Calcutta. He said, forget it. Nahi hoega. Look at the line. So I said, may I ask the people, can I move ahead? He said, try your luck. But it won't be possible. That day, Madam Luck and General Souls were on my side. So they let me go ahead. So running, I went ahead. Anyhow, somehow, I went and the bus, I climbed the bus, and then finally I went and sat inside the 8:20 Calcutta flight. That day, my first solo travel flight, I caught like how we Mumbaikars catch the local train. Same way, I felt like that. But finally I sat in the flight and the flight took off. And then I looked out the window. That time, I was not the daughter, I was not the wife, I was not the daughter-in-law, I was not a mother. I was just me, Sarita. I felt so good. I said, Sarita, you did it. And a little song, my favorite song played. दिल है छोटा सा, छोटी सी आशा, मस्ती भरे मन की भोली सी आशा, चांद तारों को छूने की आशा, आसमानों में उड़ने की आशा, दिल है छोटा सा, छोटी सी आशा. So that from that day, by God's grace, I got to travel a lot of solo traveling I've done.
Your voice is again not coming, Sarita. You lost the voice. We can't hear you, Sarita. Having an audio problem.
Now I have got the power to just tweak the story to make it so empowering for me that I go ahead and do it. Because I strongly believe that the little voices inside each one of us design a life. It is up to us. Our life moves in that direction in which we choose, the story from which we choose for the little voice, whether it is disempowering us or the one we choose that is empowering us. So now tell me, what is the little voice in your head telling? ये क्या बकवास कर रही है या बंदी कुछ बात सही बता रही है? Thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Thank you.
Excellent, Sarita. Bandi absolutely sahi baat kar rahi hai, Sarita. Absolutely. See, your story is so endearing. In fact, towards the end, now again we lost you for a few seconds, but that didn't make any difference, Sarita. Let me tell you, because those little stories told by your head, that little voice, is so empowering. Now we all could connect with that, and I like the way you sang, and also when you said, I was not the wife, I was not the mother, I was not so and so, I was just Sarita. I think that can resonate with everyone when it comes to that little voice. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us, Sarita. Thank you. Moving on, friends, our third storyteller for today is Shelly. Shelly Verma is joining us from Switzerland, and she's a performance storyteller based out of Switzerland. She grew up in India, listening to stories of kings, queens, animals, gods and goddesses, and much more. She carries all these stories with her wherever she goes. She works with traditional, contemporary, and personal stories to create narratives that inspire social change, give voice to the unheard, and make the unseen noticed. She believes stories allow us to connect to and relate to each other more deeply and meaningfully. And that is at the very heart and soul of what she does and why she does it. Shelly is another amazing storyteller and a dear, dear friend. Today, she is going to share a story, a personal story titled My Demon. So help me welcome Shelly to share her story. Over to you, Shelly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shanti. And thank you for giving me this platform to share my story, which is actually titled hashtag My Demon. so, so my story is a little bit different. And it has a bit of, it has a little bit of fantastical element to it. But I can assure you that the lived experience is very much real. So I request you to suspend your disbelief and just imagine to be real. So here it goes. I stood outside the door. The door was open. There she was, sitting on the bed, wearing her white and blue polka dot nightie, her head neatly tied into a bun, her head bent, her soft, chubby fingers working through the many clippings of the newspapers, sorting them, categorizing them, something that she loved to do. As I entered the room, she raised her head. Her body was full of light, and she said, almost whispered, "मैं आ गई हूँ. I have come back." My lips parted in confusion to say something, but I could not manage anything, and I felt beads of sweat on my forehead. And I woke up. That dream again. This little voice in my head is not just a voice, it's a mind bender, shapeshifter, and I call it my demon. And it doesn't like to be ignored. Because when I do so, it finds an uncanny way of presenting itself on the ultra high definition screen of my dreams, making itself heard, seen, felt, seen by seen. Now, I know you're puzzled, but it all started when I was about 6 or 7, and I was, spending an afternoon at my BG, my grandmother's place, playing with my cousins and sister. And there was this row of ants scurrying past us, carrying sugar granules. And for no reason at all, we started squashing, trampling the ants. And, as you can imagine, my BG was very upset. And in her eyes, we were committing a sin for which we shall have to pay in this life or future imagined lives. Or, who knows, we might be reborn as ants only to be squashed by others. That's when I heard this voice in my head for the first time. Stop it. Stop it, Shelly. Stop it. But I kind of, continued in my most cruel way. That night, I had a dream. An army of ants marching along with their drums and flutes, causing quite a pandemonium and screaming, "Revenge, revenge, revenge." And I remember waking up screaming, totally shaken to the core. And that dream kept on coming night after night. And it only stopped when I had told myself out loud that yes, whatever I did was absolutely wrong. And since then, from then on, at various stages in my life, whenever I have tried to ignore my demon, it has managed to invade my subconscious mind, offering me mind-bending possibilities in a parallel universe. So, In the year of 2022, last week of May, I woke up to a normal day, had my breakfast, usual routine. And while walking my dog in the morning, as always, I called my mother in law, my ma. She did not answer. I tried again, no answer. For the past few weeks, we had been at odds with each other. Fine, she doesn't want to talk, she's upset. And then I hear something in my mind. No, actually, I can hear something typing in my mind, the words appearing on the screen of my mind. Call her. Okay, so I try again. No answer. What does she think? Who does she think she is? Why does she have to be so snobbish? And the keys click clack again. Call her. What's the point? Call her. Fine. I pick up my phone, I call her again, but I give up. No response. And I tell this voice, just shut up. Stop typing in my head. And we continue the walk, and I walk past a field lit ablaze with poppies. May is the time when the fields are lit ablaze with poppies, red poppies, and a favorite of mine and Ma. So I click a picture and I send it to her, with a heart emoji. For you, Ma. No answer. But the keys, they click clack again. Call her. Why do I have to call her all the time? What about my self respect? Fine. I will call her one last time. And I do. And I give up because there is no answer. That night, my husband, he gets a call from his uncle in India. And he says, sorry, beta, Ma is no more. She's gone. What? How? Why? And my husband, he naturally left for India the very next morning, but I could not go, not until the next few weeks. So there was no goodbye for me, no farewell. There were so many words unspoken, unheard, all the grief, guilt buried here in the heart. So this dream did not come to me then, but about a month later, as I sat in the living room of my mother-in-law, surrounded by her pictures. And it kept on coming night after night. Sometimes the setting would change, sometimes more characters would be introduced, but every time it would always end with, Main aa gayi hu. I have come back. And it was driving me crazy. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, what was my demon trying to tell me? What am I supposed to do? So, to distract myself, I decided to train for a marathon. In the sweltering heat of Delhi in India, training for a marathon, imagine that. So, one morning, early morning, I arrived at the park and it had rained the previous night. The ground was still wet. There was hardly anyone around so early in the morning, and just a man walking with his backpack, probably in a hurry to go to work. And I started my run focusing very hard to avoid the potholes filled with water. And then out of nowhere, I heard it. First I heard it, and then I saw it. It came running from behind the trees, galloping from behind the trees, a horse, a beautiful white horse with strong muscular body and gleaming white mane, came charging in my direction. There was no one on the saddle, no one behind it. And I just stopped, and the man stopped too. We were both scared. And the horse continued running in my direction and positioned itself about 10 feet from where I stood, between me and the man. And we just stood there. Me, the man, the horse in between, staring with its sad brown eyes. We were all frozen in time. Seconds, minutes, I'm not sure. I mean, it sure felt like eternity. And then it let out a whine. Once, twice, thrice, it jerked its head up and down, up and down, up and down. And then, quick as a wink, It whirled around and went galloping in the direction it had come from. Still shaken to the core, the man and I, we just looked at each other, neither of us sure what had happened. And I continued my run. Now, it did not dawn on me then, at that moment, but later, as I continued my run, it came to me. An epiphany. An epiphany where I understood everything and nothing all at once. And just like that, tears started to roll down my cheeks, washing away all the grief, guilt that was buried here inside the heart. Now, I did not dream of Ma that night, or the night after, or any other night. I'm not a superstitious person, but I guess the demon kind of reminded me of of life's mysteries and possibilities. I know, actually, I'm quite sure that it was not the horse who had visited me that morning, it was the spirit of my ma. And when it had whined up and down and jerked its head up and down, it had come to say goodbye to me. And it was her way of saying, everything will be all right, Jill. That's what she called me, Jill. Everything will be all right. Me and my demon. My demon has been quiet for some time now. I think for now we are getting along just fine. Thank you.
Wonderful, Shelly. Wonderful. Wonderful story and excellent narration.
Thank you.
It is a mix of, you are an amazing storyteller, I know that. And that mix of your feelings, that little voice, the images in your head, the things that are typed in your head, the marching of ants, the galloping of the horse. You brought all those pictures with your excellent narration, and you combined it all together with your personal narrative, personal story. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful to listen to. Thank you for sharing that enduring story with all of us. Thank you so much, Shelly. So with that wonderful story, moving ahead, our next storyteller for today is a very, very dear friend who's joining us from Doha, Arti Jain. Arti Jain is a poet, storyteller, blogger, and author who lives in Doha, Qatar, with her husband and half a dozen of neem trees. Her work has appeared in the Kali Project, an anthology of poetry, Kindle India magazine, Gulmohar Quarterly, News India, and Poems India. She writes and performs poetry in English and Hindi. Her second book, Don't Climb on the Bullock Cart, will be published by Parakit Books, UK this month. Best wishes with that, Arti. Thank you so much for being here yet again. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And today, she is sharing her story titled, My Inner Voice Has a Name. With that, let me invite Arti. Over to you, Arti.
Thank you so much, Shanty. And after all these gorgeous stories, Shelly's and Jyoti's and Sarita's, I have sweaty palms to follow in those footsteps. So without further ado, first of all, let me just say thank you, Shanty, for this amazing space that you have. We all feel so safe to share our deepest stories with you and with everyone who's here. I'll get started. My inner voice has a name. I call it Hausla, a Hindi word. An unaccountable noun which accounts for almost every decision I have ever made in my life, especially in the face of adversity. Hausla is not just a word for me, it's a mantra. Hausla, self-belief. I am worthy. Hausla, realization, I matter. Hausla, confidence, conviction, and courage. I can do this. So the story that I'm about to share with you happened a long time ago. I was 19. I was 19 when I lost my mother and my father remarried soon afterwards. You can imagine what tectonic upheavals that must have caused in my life, and it did. It was summer, June actually. I was home waiting for my final year results from Delhi University. I was home, but home was missing. I felt as if my mother had been replaced, and despite the safety of the four walls around me and the roof above my head, I felt displaced, rootless, fish out of water. Within a few days of that summer, I realized I'd have to find a job to earn some money. So when a school friend mentioned that our local newspaper, Doon Darpan, was looking for a receptionist, I applied and I got the job. So it was about 10 or so days after I'd started when one evening I got home and I was told to wash up and wear something nice and come into the sitting room for we had visitors. Not knowing who these visitors were, I followed instructions, and when I opened the door, I noticed two strangers, a youngish man and an oldish lady sitting with my family. Still clueless, I sat down till the word rishta dropped like a ton of bricks, shattering my dreams into smithereens. My hopes, those broken promises, the things that I wanted to do in my life shone like broken shards, despite those tears that I gulped back and I sat mute. But my inner voice, it whispered, "Run, Arti, run. This is a trap." Numb, dumb, and stunned, I sat while conversation floated around me. I got snippets of, maybe through a blur, I don't know, someone was saying, "How much do you earn, beta?" "Oh, 1,500. She makes 1,000. That's plenty to get you started, right?" Numb, dumb, and stunned. I sat till they left. But my inner voice was so loud now that I could hear the silence speak, the silence that followed the fiasco I had been a part of just a few moments ago. The silence mocked me. I couldn't sleep that night. Tossing and turning, I heard whispered conversations through jammed doors and unshed tears, and I heard how suitable the boy is and how lucky I am to find a rishta even before I have graduated from university. I had no idea. Who does a 19-year-old turn to when she's homeless? What do I do? But my inner voice, my haussla, didn't give up. In fact, it got louder and stronger and louder and stronger, and it jolted me and said, "Hausla rakh, Arti, have patience. Hausla, you are worthy. Your mother raised you so. Hausla, you matter. Your mother raised you so. You have the confidence, the courage, the conviction. You can do this. Your mother raised you so." Our mother. Our mother raised my sister and I to work hard, study hard, be independent, but live life like we want to. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, when I went back to work, I told my boss of only 10 days everything. I didn't hold back. And she heard me, my boss. Let's call her Mrs. Editor. In her mid-30s with gorgeous brown eyes, and she used to wear these stunning cotton saris I used to drool over. And I used to wonder if I'd ever have the money to buy a sari of my own. And I remember fantasizing about if I got a job where I had enough money to buy a sari, I promised myself I'd wear one to work every day. She heard me. I don't know if she understood, but she patted my shoulder and said, "Think about this. I'll talk to you tomorrow." The more I thought about it, the clearer the picture was for me, the stronger my haussla became. That night, when I got home, I put all of my belongings, very few, all of my school certificates in my bag and kept it ready. The next morning at work, I told her, "I have to leave. If I stay, they will get me married off. I'm going to Delhi," I said. After a few hours, just before the end of the day, she handed me an envelope with my 10 days worth of salary. And she said, "This is highly unusual. We normally wouldn't do this. You haven't even completed your probation period. And then she scribbled a number on a piece of paper and said, "This is my brother's number. He is an editor with a national paper in Delhi. Call him if you ever need anything. Delhi is not easy." Luckily for me, I never had to call him. You see, my best friend from university knew what was going on, and she'd let her heart, and her family had left their home open for me. So I knew that I had a place to stay in Delhi. What I didn't know was, what will I tell my family? So on my way back home, I cooked up a lie, a story. And I said, "You know what? There is this very important interview that's just come up, and I must go and I have to go tomorrow. I'll miss it." Expecting a barrage of questions, of resistance. None came. Not a single question, just silence. No one asked me which company, what job, why so suddenly, where will you stay, or do you have the money to buy the ticket? And that's when I knew that my hausla, my inner voice, had guided me on the right path. That next day, when I sat in the UP Roadways bus after buying my ticket, I counted my money. I had a sum total of 257 rupees. Yes, I will never forget that number, to start a new life. I didn't know then whether I'd ever find my way back home or if I'd ever want to even. The next years were tough. They were really, really hard. But not once did I question my decision of listening to my inner voice. Not a single regret of opening my heart out to a total stranger, a boss of 10 days, of accepting the generosity of my friends and their families. I did not regret that one bit. You see, life throws its challenges in spurts and splashes. And if we let doubt or what will people say in, we endanger drowning out our hausla, our inner voice. And that inner voice is called the little voice for a reason. It doesn't shout, it doesn't scream. It's very soft. It's like a light within that guides our path. To be able to see that light, to be able to hear that voice, we have to travel within. And this well of peace, of strength, of courage is within all of us. But it's on us to reach it. And we have the skills. We have the skills, we have the bucket, we have the rope to pull it out to the surface, to drink in this elixir of self belief, to listen to our inner voice so that we may live a life which is not peppered with regrets or missed opportunities. And I truly believe Hausla is the bridge between realization, I matter, and self-realization. A life lived to the best of our potential. Don't you think we owe that much to ourselves? Life is a miracle, right? And I believe that inner voice is the guide that lets us live that miracle every day if we just let it. Thank you so much for letting me share this very personal time of my life. And I feel absolutely privileged that I'm here today. Thank you.
Absolutely, really speechless, Arti. Listening to that story right from your heart. And I also would like to say that it's so overwhelming to see people like you coming here and considering to bear your hearts and souls with your stories that are so intimate, so personal, to give us that, that message that you said, the word, I love that, elixir of self-belief, elixir of self-belief. So I think while listening to these kind of stories, that's when I feel that it's all worth it. The space, it's worth the space, it's worth all the efforts. Sometimes I wonder and I doubt, sometimes even people ask, how are you continuing with this kind of a space, and what is it helping you move ahead, or things like that. So this is my answer. The stories that we hear, these stories, bearing your hearts and souls and considering it to share with us. We are fortunate to listen to these stories, all four storytellers, different stories. And after listening to your story, Arti, now I wonder sometimes when I read the lines that you write, she's an author. I already mentioned that she's a poet. So I wonder, how can someone write lines that straight goes into your heart and touches it there, Now I know how and why it comes from you. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful, intimate, personal story. Thank you so much. And
Thank